All right. So, would anyone in particular like to start off with their check-in?
I'll start. uh, Feeling good. Had a wonderful session on Saturday at Heartwood Farm and Cidery, and Elliot was there leading one of the learning areas and helping to organize it. So it went really well. It was a real high point of the week.
Oh,
I'll pass it over. I'll pass it over to RJ.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, we're here in northeastern Pennsylvania, and that's Lenni Lenape land, and two main sections, the Muncie and the Unami. We're in the Unami section, and I've been looking again at the glaciation, and I have a feeling that we're, in a lot of ways, through the glaciation, connected to the Great Lakes. Although we're at the far end, the end where the melting occurred, leaving all the glaciation debris, which made it a very interesting area. But in a sense, we're the beneficiary of all that rock and everything else that was deposited here. So yeah, and we're into fall, of course, but the leaves are just starting to change. We're working on permaculture planning for next spring. That's an event that we had, and looking forward to that, and trying to tie in regeneration with that too. So I'll pass it on to Jonathan.
Sure. Well, we've had lots of stuff going on, but as I was saying earlier, it seems like things are moving quite slowly. We're making contacts and connections little by little, and finding that, you know, people are not really jumping up to take part. So it's a little bit like pulling teeth. But we did attend an event on climate and mental health, put on by one of our partners, which was absolutely freezing and uncomfortable, but survivable. And then yesterday, the EcoFest, which had most of the green groups in the region, again displaying their programs in the midst of an ice storm, and you know, very little interaction, in fact. But little by little, we're inching our way into winter. So, Kimberly.
Hello, I'm just shifting gears to be here. Jonathan, I watched your one meeting and I thought it was so good. I was really inspired by everything that's happening in your region. It doesn't seem slow to me. It seems like they're the right things. And going to the land, and when that was a theme that came up, if I recall, when Joe and Penny were here. So there's just, you know, certain things that resonate, and that's definitely one of them. And the connection with the person who left the school to start the nature program, and all the inner city stuff, when people wanting to get out to the land, seems very right. So I was inspired by that all week. So yeah, that is about it. I don't know who went before, but I know Chad did not go yet, so.
Hit that button. Yeah, I'm doing all right. I actually just bookmarked those videos, Jonathan's videos, because I'm interested in I've been interested in hearing a little bit more about what's going on there, and I'm glad things are proceeding apace. And Kim, I don't know if you if you attended the Great Lakes Conference or if that was happening recently, but if so, I'd like to get an update on that too. Yeah, I just went for a walk today and definitely feel that we are entering the tail half of fall here. Everything is on its way out. Things are a little damp and the coolness is setting in. Yeah. So there's some woods here that we have, and I went walking through there, and there were apparently 75 pounds worth of chicken in the woods growing out there. It's quite a bit. So that was a nice forage. And next year, if we have such a flush, we want to have a big community meal around that. Make a lot of soup with 75 pounds of mushrooms. Although we left about 2/3 of them there for nature. Yeah, so we have this Friday to Saturday and Sunday. There's a place here called Earthwell. I'm sure I've mentioned it in the space before. I see it as being the prime candidate for a bioregional learning center. And a group that I'm involved with, we have an MOU with Earthwell. And we'll be having a few days of workshops and discussions, bonfire. There'll be some musicians coming in to stir up the discussion. The workshops will include things like prairie management and all sorts of cool stuff. So I have another retreat that weekend, so I can't attend the whole time. But I plan on making some of it, or perhaps even doing as much of the retreat as I can on the land there. And so I suppose similarly as how in the Regenerate Cascadia activation, I understand there is I need to be sensitive.
You're breaking up a little bit, Chad.
Existing connection load, which include like to maybe interested to step into the space here through those activations. So in a similar kind of way. So I mean, there are other people involved in the projects that I just mentioned. They don't necessarily have a bioregional lens, not yet. Bioregionally compatible, yes. In something like a whole learning center might pique their interest, but it's not where they are yet. So, and these other workshops and activities are ones that they are existing already like cognizant of, like the topics. So there I'll be thinking about how to like put out feelers and teasers for a wider discussion on what a center would conceivably look like and how it would be funded and structured and so forth. So yeah, more to report soon. Let's see. I'm not sure who else. RJ?
I think it's just Elliot, and I don't know
Elliot.
Elliot and me, and I don't know if Elliot has the capacity to do a check-in right now.
There we go. It registered my fingers finally. Yes. I'm definitely in one of my happy places right now. At times I get exhausted from the amount of driving that needs to happen. And I like yearn for a simpler life where it's just like, okay, here's like the spot where I can grow my food, and here's kind of the area that I'm working. And every once in a while for certain seasonal feasts or whatever, maybe the chicken in the woods feast in Michigan, go and travel somewhere and visit other people. But yeah, that's it. I'm mostly just gonna listen in today and keep doing the little inventory that we're finishing up here. So Anna, over to you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I think like everybody, it feels like fall here too. It's been really actually raining a lot over the past 2 weeks or so. Wrapping up the community garden and preparing for winter and fall. So that's been mainly me personally. and I'm excited to hear all the updates from everybody too, because I know that Benji and I have been working on some projects that I've already reached out to a few of you about, that I want to share as well for the design school. But yeah, I think so this our meeting so far, this is kind of our general meeting, and the other weeks are supposed to be more campfires and open conversations. Whoever shows up, you can talk about whatever you would like. It's not really very structured, but I think when we convene once a month for our general meetings, that's a good time for us to share the updates that are going on and kind of getting back into that routine. Does that sound good to everybody here? So this is kind of the first time that we've met since we've changed up the structure a little bit. Yeah. Okay, great. Brian, I know that you mentioned that you had some updates. Would you like to go first?
Sure, thanks, Anna. Yeah, I will have to leave early today from this meeting. That's why I wanted to give you a quick update of what is happening in the Greater Tkaronto bioregion, the GTB. I posted an article in the GTB space on Mighty Networks and the design school, so you can check that out if you're a member. We had a couple of visitors this week from different places. So Cassie Robinson first from the UK, and she is working for the Joseph Rowntree Foundation and other foundations, and she's part of other groups. She's looking at the edges of philanthropy and how we can try and encourage more philanthropy into regeneration and into systems work, into process work, because she said it's difficult. Some funders are starting to look at, maybe we should spend down part of our endowment because of the seriousness of the poly crisis that the world is facing. Here in Canada, one foundation, the Ivy Foundation, has decided to spend down its entire endowment in the next 5 years and devote its efforts to climate change. Unfortunately, their focus is mostly on tech, reducing carbon through tech. They have provided some money for regenerative agriculture, as far as I know, but their primary focus is tech-based. The foundation she's affiliated with in the UK are trying to reevaluate where they are, but they tend to be very, very traditional in their membership and orientation and their board. So it takes a while, it takes a bit of learning to get those. Typically, it's white males who are leading these boards at these large foundations. So it's hard to get their heads into a new place. So it takes a lot of learning. So she shared with us her work. She's also doing work on stewarding loss, supporting civil society organizations who no longer have a function in society to transition and to go through a ritual process. So she's doing quite interesting work. The second visitor we had was Stuart Cowan from the Buckminster Fuller Institute, sorry, in San Francisco. And he was in Toronto to speak at a conference and connected with us. So we had an opportunity to spend an afternoon with him up at our site, the Cedars. So it was very interesting to learn more about what the Buckminster Fuller Institute is doing. They're doing several design labs to support the regeneration and bioregional initiatives around the world. So there's some interesting work that could help inform our work in all of our bioregions. It's not published yet, but it's coming. With both of these individuals, we talked about, how do you build a collaborative funding ecosystem for a bioregion? And in our case, we were also looking at how do you build a collaborative funding ecosystem for the Great Lakes Basin. And this is something that when Joe was here in the summer, we talked about, and we're continuing discussions with Joe, and he's connected us with others to explore how you can bring together a collaborative funding ecosystem. So that's something that we're actively researching and talking to people about, and we have some meetings coming up with different folks. So I'll let you know what comes out of those meetings and ideas, but we're looking at the whole gamut, from the whole field of regenerative finance and Web3 tools to encouraging more interest from philanthropists in regeneration movements and work, and funding core teams in landscapes. So that is all being worked on. We have tentative dates for the 7 Generation Local to Global Summit, February 5th to February 10th. So you can mark that in your calendar. We're going to do virtual and live streaming and some in person. So I'll keep you posted on what happens, but we're looking at February 5th to February 10th. So the one of the days will be devoted to collaborative funding ecosystems for bioregions. We want to do the fractal scale linking through the summit, as I said in previous meetings. So starting with the GTB, and then expanding out to the Great Lakes Basin and all of the work that you're doing around the Great Lakes Basin, and connecting to that, and then connecting to the bioregions in the other parts of Turtle Island and around the world that are all part of the design school. So as I said, the theme is local to global through the week. And so I'll stay tuned for more information on that. So on Saturday this past week, we had the Heartwood Farm and Cidery field site experience for our student eco leaders and our elders and residents for the intergenerational zone. And Elliot was part of that. So Val and her husband, who own Heartwood Farm and Cidery, Val was hosting with, Val happens to be one of our elders and residents, and the student eco leader she's working with is Shora, who lives at the farm as well with her mom. So it was really cool to get Val and Shora leading the design of this day, and with help from myself and Susan and Elliot and some other people as well, putting together 3 different learning stations. One of Val's neighbors, Kathy, is a long-time organic vegetable grower and soil health expert, and she did a wonderful talk at that learning station on healthy soils, and she brought real dugout samples of soil from a conventional farm next to her farm, to what the soil looks like when you're growing cover crops over it. Was really, really well done. And then Elliot did a session on a woodlot that he's helping the Val steward on the farm, and plans for that, and also connecting to the barn. They have different farm animals there, and then Val took everyone out to the fields where they have different grazing areas, and she explained how if you have the right type of cows and the right rotation, and you get everything in balance, that the cows and the healthy soils can be part of a whole system. And she also was planting trees in the hedgerow there, and she talked about how she did her hedgerows and contours to capture the rainwater, prevent erosion, and feed the aquifer beneath. So that was really cool as well. So a wonderful learning experience through the whole day, and the students and the elders and some teachers came out as well, and some parents. Was a great learning opportunity. We only had capacity for a certain number of people, so we couldn't open it up to others, unfortunately. They have a yurt that was used for part of the program. It only accommodates so many people, so we were slightly over capacity for that session. So that gives you the quick overview of things from the GTB. So I'll open any questions people have, or we can move on to the next bioregion.
So I have a quick question. So those dates for the summit, it's going to be the 5th to the 10th in February. Was there any talk about the whether before or after would be better for Joe or Penny to go visit other places? Or is that more something that we should ask them?
They were, I think they were thinking more after.
Okay.
They're going to come in a little early to do some other meetings before the summit starts. So they'll probably spend a couple of weeks in the GTB, and they were talking about then visiting with you afterwards and possibly other bioregions. So, but because I haven't been able to talk to Joe and Penny because they're on the middle of the tour. As soon as the tour is over, then we'll continue finishing the planning for the summit with them.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, Brian, for sharing. And I know that Jonathan also has some updates on what's going on in Rochester. Jonathan, would you like to share any more about you already shared a little bit about what's been going on with your bioregional learning center in Rochester, but is there anything else you would like to share?
Well, I am actually trying to get Victoria to join me here. Oh, she's going to join upstairs, so that we can provide a little update together. So we're on, Victoria, to provide a little update on our bioregional learning center initiative. We did have a meeting, which thank you, Kim, for saying something positive about it, with Ron Washington of the Urban League and a couple of other people. And it really seems like it could be very valuable as a place for inner city kids to get out into nature. Sort of one of these classic, expose kids to something other than the streets. And so that was a great meeting, and I put together a short PowerPoint using some of Joe's slides. And that seemed to go over fairly well. But what else would you add to that, Victoria?
I mean, we're taking it slow. So we've been preoccupied by some other things, life and other projects. So I don't have a particular update. We're meeting a lot of people, and everywhere we go, people are interested. So I know that it's happening, it will happen, and we're just taking a slow road. And of course, we'll be doing something with the summit in January. We just haven't gotten there yet to think about it. So if there's someone that wants to just have a small meeting with Jonathan and I and saying, this is what is happening here is what we think would be useful for us, for Rochester to do for the whole Great Lakes, and how other people are starting. We just have almost no volunteers yet, so it's just really Jonathan and I. So, we're not able to do, we're not doing much right now. It will change. So if is there someone who would be the right person for us to talk with about what we take on for the summit? A narrow something focused to get something going, because there's a lot of interest. There isn't anyone who doesn't resonate with this that we talk about. And we definitely see that we're not going to be a retail focused kind of organization going out and trying to get volunteers for us, so much as the work that needs to be done to weave the existing organizations. We're so new in town. Well, we probably have bigger networks than most people just because of who we are and how we go about things in general. It's a cliquey place, and I think what people love is that we're interested in them. When we're interested in them, they're interested in us, because we're not going to take their people away from them. And they love the concept. And Jonathan and I just don't have the, what it takes right now to go out and get lots of volunteers. So we want to work with the people who are already doing things that are so relevant and see how we can bring in the bioregional focus. So would love to have somebody who's in deeply in lots of places say, here are some ideas of how you can start and do something small but impactful. That would be my request, given that we're just kind of spread thin, and trying to catch up to where everybody else is probably isn't the right way to go, because we'll be forever catching up. We do keep, I'm just thrilled with, everything that Joe and what we see is going on. And we see that it could happen here too. It's, so that's all.
Yes, Victoria, in terms of the local to global summit in early February, you can just contact me and I'll be in touch with you and Jonathan as well.
Okay.
As we come up with connecting with the other parts of the Great Lakes during the summit. So I'll be back in touch with you, and feel free to contact me as well. And Kim, I'll be in touch with you, and Dave and Peter as well, and Chad with you, and Anna, and we're still working through the best way to pull all this together.
Great, thanks. Love what everybody's doing. One thing that did occur to me that I'd love to bounce off of you, it seems that since bioregionalism is so new as compared to sustainability and ecological everything, that in a racially segregated place like we are, where race is the issue in Rochester, by far, it is the issue for everybody. And we have a great relationship with the Urban League, which is the racial organization in town that does a lot of things. That it seems that if we stay with that and stay with the leverage that we can gain in the Black community around nature, everyone's behind, like the white population isn't doing what it needs to be doing, and neither is the Black. But my sense is if we really ally closely with the Black and brown people here, we'll get many things done. And since it's nobody's territory right now, bioregionalism, why not have it be something that's led by the Black community? To me, it seems like, like we could, it just energizes me to think that if we energize the Black and brown community, we'll pull the rest of the community with us, and it will be a very unifying force. But I'd be interested in what other people are seeing, and race is an explosive issue everywhere, but particularly here. it's a matter of where we focus,
So I can just say that inclusivity is I'm part of a group that's called Birds on the Niagara, and it is in a lot of ways a bioregional lens that they're looking at for migratory birds along the Niagara River corridor, so in both Canada and in the US. And inclusivity is like the big thing that they're focusing on. And I think that there's the Black Birders Society is based in Buffalo too, so they're really trying to engage them. They're trying to engage the Tonawanda Band of Seneca, who are just outside of the Iroquois National Reserve. That's out in, I think, Wyoming County. So I think having inclusivity and that story of place background, maybe not necessarily pushing the bioregional agenda, because I think that that's problematic when you want to bring these other groups that are already doing things onto your agenda, but going to them and saying, like, you guys are doing great work. How can we support you? And looking at this as more of the Genesee River Valley rather than just Rochester. What groups can we engage in all of these different communities? That might be better than trying to bring them onto the bioregional agenda. Instead, going out to those groups and saying, how can we bring all of our groups together and look at it as a holistic, approach? Like, what are all the great things? Because I know that what those women who let us use their space for the bioregional activation tour events, they have a lot of stuff that they're doing in the inner city of Rochester that's really wonderful, and work placement programs and things like that. How can you link them with groups that might focus on BIPOC communities with that kind of environmental focus?
I'm not sure I'm understanding why we wouldn't call it bioregional for the global. So I think I'm probably missing the point of what you're saying. Can you say it again?
Yeah, I guess I mean, instead of saying, I guess, going to all these groups that are focused on environmental causes and social justice causes within the Genesee River Valley, rather than trying to say, hey, join us in what we're doing, focusing more on how can we support you guys and linking you with other things at the more holistic landscape scale. I think that has more of a, how can we lift you up, rather than come and join our cause. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Well, definitely. Yeah. So I'm still thinking about it. So thanks. Yeah.
Chad?
Race and inequality are certainly also top issues here. Not too far outside of Detroit, so we also have in common being in the Rust Belt, in a deindustrializing zone, and there the touch points. The touch points are primarily, well, two of the most important touch points are certainly education and livelihoods. So I can give a number of examples of that and how they may fit into this discussion. So one is the Community Foundation here. Brian was also made mention of the collaborative funding ecosystem. So the Community Foundation here is fairly forward thinking and well resourced, and race and inequality are high on their agenda. There was also a local food summit here a couple of years ago, and it was an annual summit, but that's been discontinued. But there again, race, and particularly around providing access to people of color to land, and farming opportunities was hot on the discussion. There's a Black gardener on a board that I am on myself, and he's involved in so many different projects. And he laments the difficulty that people of color have in getting loans, and the paltry percentage of that demographic in the farming community. And in the meetings, he's always looking for opportunities to raise that into this discussion, to find opportunities to support that need. Also, the same organization also is working with him to purchase some lots of land that are on auction by the city of Detroit to turn into gardens and farming opportunities. So there's that. That group is also involved in River Rouge, which is down it's on the Detroit River, and it's one of the most blasted out industrial zones probably in the country. And we have a project there that is looking to install some rain gardens, and we have some support from a regional foundation to do that in concert with the city. But rather than just installing it, want to have that part of a community consultation, so people are involved in what that looks like and have a say in how it turns out, and are aware that it's happening. And we're also in conversation with somebody who has an agreement with public schools of Oakland and Macomb counties, which are also around Detroit, to develop an environmental curriculum around the Great Lakes. They're again public school students, and yeah. So here I'm thinking about the intergenerational zone as an opportunity to weave what we're doing here into that initiative. So there's a few examples and things going on that I see, being salient to this, and just figuring out what the next steps might be. So.
Mhm.
Yes, this could, I'm glad you raised this, Victoria. This could be a topic that would go, I think, for several sessions, because it is so key. It's interesting here where I live in Lehigh County. We demographically show as the most representative county in the entire nation for diversity of ethnic backgrounds and racial backgrounds, which of course is all together, language and so on. I pretty much know why that is, and we know why that is. Some of it has to do with, as Chad was talking about, industrialization. We were the home of Bethlehem Steel that brought in around World War II and after very, very different ethnic groups who started out at the lowest wage, lowest level. And of course, Bethlehem Steel is long gone, but the neighborhoods are still there. And that's part of the challenge, because despite all that diversity, the way opportunity in terms of housing and neighborhoods developed meant that there are many areas across the Lehigh Valley where we might have a percentage of 50% of a certain ethnic group or a certain racial background. And other areas are as low as 5% or 10%. We have a large Hispanic population from all the Central American, South American countries, as well as Puerto Rico. And that's the fastest growing population in Lehigh County. So in struggling with this as to how to bring people together, I know we have the conversations all the time. When and we have a lot of representation now in local offices, elected offices. But so many times those conversations are around, very concrete economic issues that pertain to the legislative district that they're in. And to get into, as we really have an interest in doing, to get into the environmental aspects, the watershed aspects, the sustainability aspects, the bioregional aspects, is very hard to have a longer conversation on. And yet I know from so many meetings, the topics keep coming up. For example, how can the kids in Allentown be exposed to the waterways that we have and be involved in their own neighborhoods of course, the term comes up, greening, and so the greening of these neighborhoods. So that's an ongoing topic. And for example, there's a group among many, but this is pretty well known, of Promised Neighborhoods of the Lehigh Valley that's been working very, very hard on that. So how do we have a lot of farmland, as you know, a lot of old coal region lands, which don't have, in terms of where the population is, don't have that diversity. Here with our farmland south of the mountain, very strong Amish, Pennsylvania Dutch. Okay. North of the mountain is very strong Eastern European and European backgrounds that came in, and also English, Welsh, Irish, all this. And it's gradually changing, but to have one conversation or a group of conversations around this in what we're most interested in at this point, how to tie in the long-term future of all these communities. It's very hard to get to that point that we're really having a focused discussion on that. I think our best opportunity, we have 5 really pretty strong universities, all the way from Lehigh to Lafayette, so on, that do address these topics. And on the academic side, there have been discussions. A lot of it has been around children and next generation, but if we can get that piece involved, and there is some funding to do that, I think that would be a way to do it. And it's amazing when I think of how little monetary support it would take to do this, that I look at something like NOAA just provided a $1 million grant to Nurture Nature Center that's very strongly connected with the Delaware River watershed, which is great. Can we pull that in? I know they would be interested. We just have to see how we can do that. So I don't want to go on long, presentation on that, but I know this is a key topic for the future of this region, as it is, I think, in all our regions. So I'll pass it on to anybody else who has any thoughts. I'm glad you brought that up, Victoria. That's been something on my mind very much, and I don't think I've talked about it before.
And I think, by the way, if people haven't seen that presentation that was done by the guys in India, and it was a couple of months ago, it was pretty astounding. And they were focusing on livelihoods, especially urban livelihoods. And India is different. It is definitely there's lots of things that are different there. But I think, the key will be with youth. What's their livelihood? How does bioregionalism give them a different livelihood? Something different than college education, or even inside of college, where would you focus so that there's going to be work for the next couple of decades, because people will need that, and that it pays. So, certainly if we're talking about urban, if we're talking about BIPOC inclusivity, if it doesn't have to do with making money, we have no interest. I mean, there will be no interest. So that's the key. And getting money from funding sources, boy, you know, we are so at baby steps in that we have to, that's another whole area we have to learn, you know, how and where we look for grants. But if we just understood what were the incomes, let's forget about jobs, you know, because it's going to be more entrepreneurial. You know, what are people going to be needing to have done that young people could see themselves learning and getting a jump on before the shit hits the fan. We'll be talking 5-10 years before it becomes very obvious that, you know, to a lot of people who don't see it now, that we're not going to have those careers that everybody, you know, go to college and get a job and all that stuff that's still pretty entrenched. You know, it's a hope and a longing that people have, but it's really a path. It's not a path for the long term. What is the path? So I'm still being moved and touched to figure out where me and our organization is going to do the best work.
I'd like to briefly add, and you bring that to mind because I think that's really important. I know it is here, so I'm assuming it's elsewhere as well. We definitely here in the greater Lehigh Valley, we definitely have 300 or more young entrepreneurs who are in all sorts of areas, and some are becoming quite successful. And that's not that everyone can be a young entrepreneur, but it is a way toward the future. And they're pretty dynamic people across the board because they've really put it out there to achieve what they're achieving. I think that would be a perfect group to be talking. There's several small groups and associations that talk about this all the time. That would be a perfect group here to approach and talk about what's the future for all the children coming up.
What
And I
kind
think
of
we'd get some,
entrepreneurial kinds of things are they pursuing?
oh, just all sorts. Certainly a lot of tech skills, and a lot of kind of cutting edge stuff. There's several small businesses now, medium-sized businesses that have risen out of that because of the skills that are there and the the push that these individuals are making to let's go here. And Lehigh Valley is a good place in terms of it's close to New York and Philadelphia, but it's not anywhere near the same expenses to live and grow, start a business. So yeah, it's that kind of thing. And there's a lot of connection there in the discussions that they have and the things that they talk about together that we aren't excluded at all from. When I say we, I mean people who aren't of that exact background. So it's a pretty welcoming area and pretty supportive. And I know they would be interested. These groups would be interested in what we're talking about here if we could just get on some of the agendas.
But just I'll say this one thing about that India, the presentation from the guys in India. They talk about builders in the blockchain world where they're not depending on money exchange, but it's the exchange of the capitals, and they're working on those things because I think to the extent that we broaden people's minds to what do you really need to live, thrive, eat, shelter, whatever in the future, if we stop only thinking about money, and include these other things that young people they're not excluded from. They can go off and learn these things, which I, a total newbie, and I know Joe knows quite a lot about that, but I think to the extent that we can find out what is specifically going on and how young people can see that if they get those skills and that knowledge, and there's no boundaries, there's no barriers there, the same way there are in other IT functions of the main society, and how that will actually deliver them value that they can live on, in way. So.
Great. Well, thank you, Rochester, for giving us your updates. I hope that you guys are able to, move forward with your agenda and yeah, and convene some of these groups. Would Chad or Kim or Elliot or RJ, would either of you, do any of you guys have updates that you would like to share?
I can share a little, but it's very simple since I had Great Lakes Campfire here on my calendar.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Yeah, I updated it.
No, yeah, no, it's fine. I can just say just for myself, because the people here on the ground in Cleveland, part of our organizing team, are very busy. They're in different places doing different things. Anna, you can share about the pro-social stuff you're doing with Dave Nash. I don't know what that is. What I've been doing, I've been watching the videos, and Victoria, what I said before you came on was that I was really struck by what you're doing. I think it's really important that you're in conversations to get children to the land. I don't know that there's anything more important than that. I realize what I'm really interested in is being part of a way to transform systems and also consciousness. And you talked about that yourself in that video too, which I really appreciated. And in a lot of different places, there's a lot of activity in getting just more people to the land, wherever they're from. My friend Mulaney up in Sault Ste. Marie, it's a big part of her work right now. So thank you for that. What else? I've been visiting with people like in regenerative farms, going to retreats, that kind of thing around Cleveland. And it's the same, I think, as a bioregional level. People are trying to figure out where we are, how we can be better together in community, helping each other right now. Some of the people there did go to the event at CASE where I work, but they're not, a part of CASE. And what else? I started a Wednesday evening welcome campfire on the design school site for people who may want to do, that kind of stuff in the evening. I did not end up going to the Great Lakes Conference. This was after Climate Week at the university. And to be honest, I just kind of felt alone, feel alone in what I'm doing. And I think I've got a full-time job. There's not a lot of, communication happening. If I go to this conference, one of many, many conferences on the Great Lakes, I'm just asking, why am I going? What will I do with this information? And this was after, like I mentioned, Climate Week. One event I was able to go to was the sustainability director of the county and of the city, and someone from our environmental law clinic, and they were in a conversation. And to me, I just felt I'm out of step. This is, people are being very the tone was very optimistic, and I don't know. Again, it was just like, what are we doing? So, and that was the same week as the Great Lakes Conference, and I had a lot to do at my job, and I just decided to stay. So I could use some cohesion. I tend to go where there is that, and I don't know if this is just temporary right now, but just feels very singular. But I love our meetings here. I love seeing all of you in different parts of our Great Lakes region. I feel there's something really important about that. Oh, and I'm into co-creating regenerative funding ecosystems. And there was one that was, asking for proposals today I didn't submit one because I don't do things by myself. So, and there will be more opportunities, but I just feeling like, where is the fit? And not just for me, I just mean all together. So thanks.
I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about the funding ecosystems that you're part of. Are they like location specific or general or industry specific?
No, bioregional specific. It came out of the Bioregional Regeneration Summit that took place a year ago at this time. Most of you know Ben Roberts, open to everyone. And there are, it's ongoing. So this was an experiment. For me, it was a sprint, like a 4-month sprint that continued, but I wasn't that active after the 4 months because I personally wasn't learning a lot and things weren't changing. I was looking at how can we look at energy in the form of money to bring that to transformative projects and regenerative projects that need it. We hear about all of this money. But for me, that wasn't happening. And I did end up joining then a regenerative economics group that I love, that's just ending, part of the Center for Ecozoic Studies. And where there are all kinds of people in business that probably, might want to be in some, this type of group like ours. I don't know. But yeah, no, that's open to anyone. And you reach out to Ben Roberts, or Joe's in it. Joe is on the list. So
was that the 4-month series put on by Michael Haupt from South Africa?
It was a companion to that.
Okay.
And mostly leading it was Ben, but it's international. I mean, it's global. There's people all over. It's not huge. But Sage or Bill Bowie's in it, Ralph Thrum, and then just regular people, a lot of regenerative farmers, a lot of groups in Africa. Although, like I said, it's not a lot of people. They're just from all over.
And what is the focus? And that's a hard question.
Co-creating regenerative funding ecosystems. So something that would, keep going. And right now the focus is on the community that's there now. So, whatever funding would come in would go to support the work of the people in that community now.
And the community is global, and it's in all kinds of different projects, right?
All regenerative to regeneration, I would say. And all, not trying to frame bioregionalism, but every place is a bioregion. So it's already there. If we're looking at Earth first, every place is a bioregion.
On what basis do people get an allocation of money? Or is it like Joe's, where there's a decision-making process about where to allocate money that comes in? I was like,
yeah. And I don't know what frame is being used. Like I know here is pro-social. I don't know what it is in the other group. I don't pay attention to that much stuff too much, but yeah. And it's an outgrowth of the blueprint that was put together by Bill and Ralph a year or so ago.
Yeah, RJ, you want to go next?
And Ralph who?
PHRUM. I don't know how to
Ralph
spell.
Thurm. Yeah, I used to work with him at Exxon, believe it or not. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, just a very brief comment, maybe even a little bit of a question. And I think we're talking about Ben Roberts, that gathering.
Yes.
What I found fascinating about that is there was a clustering that went on where if you joined in, you could get to know almost anyone who was on, and there was so many people that were on with so many different skills and interests that I thought, where do I go next? And I really felt I put myself out on the periphery. I didn't take good advantage of that, nor if I had, would I have known where it was headed. It's kind of this thing of you say, oh, there's so much richness there, but how to approach it in a way that I would be organizing what I would have to contribute well. So yeah, and I have a feeling that's going to keep coming up. It did have sort of naturally sort of an academic flavor, but all the a whole bunch of projects were there that were going on, and a whole bunch of people who are really involved in so many things. And I think actually I might have even have met you there, Kim, just very briefly. But that's my comment, is how to tie these things together. And really, I probably should be asking questions when I don't understand where to go next, because something like that is very rich. That's my comment.
Yeah, and we met in a dialoguing space. We were going to do dialogues in between the summits because there was going to be another one, and then there wasn't another one. But then I met Anna through you. Yes, and there's a reason we're all here.
Yeah, Chad.
Yeah, it seems that the topic of funding and livelihoods is a recurrent one, especially in this discussion now. And I think it would be very helpful to have pathways mapped out into livelihoods. What is currently existing and what could exist to help people get to where they want to go. I have a friend who's a high school career counselor. I'd like to actually talk to him about that, but what pathways he could see for students into regenerative work. And that goes, this is a very broad topic, and it also gets to, discussions that Jonathan and Victoria were hosting on Right Livelihood. And that includes everything from, a broader, the broader mission of linking young people up to meaningful work, to things more personal and perhaps for us as well, so, and also projects, right? And projects and all this. So just having a more structured conversation around what that looks like would be helpful. I know it'd be helpful for me personally, even getting into specifics. So I'm considering taking on more of a full course load, teaching course load next spring. But that would take time away from doing what I really want to do, right? So yeah, so what would it take? Like, what kinds of work opportunities are out there? What are the skill sets needed? And what needs to happen to stitch them together? Like, what would it, for example, like what would it take to bring in, yes, we want multi forms of capital, but also mortgage to pay. So like $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 per month, like being really specific about it. Oh, this is what it would look like. These are the opportunities that we can currently identify. These are possibility spaces that could be opened up. It'd just be very helpful for, I know personally planning for what I do in the next 6 months and beyond. So, yeah. And everybody's situation is sort of unique as well. So it's part of a community conversation. Yeah.
Victoria?
Yeah, Chad, there's a guy that reached out to Jonathan regarding the Right Livelihoods conversation. He wanted to continue it. I don't know if you heard. What's his name, Jonathan? The guy from Tunisia, I think it is. But so there's a guy who, and it's interesting because their country.
Elias.
What?
It's Elias or Elias.
Yeah. And he showed us this presentation of how he had developed his pathway. And he had broken it down into the various skill sets that he was developing, and that was literally about regenerating Earth and consulting. And so just seeing what he did for himself, he and his wife, I think he's got children, and he has taught himself certain regenerative skill sets, and then he has a plan for how much he brings in from each one of these different things. They're fairly related and connected. And if you're the kind of person that does that easily, I don't think I could ever, really keep to that, but it's just the way he works anyway. It was fascinating because he knew what his projections were over the next 6 months to be getting from each of these different things, whether it was teaching or consulting or, doing various things that were around his skill sets. And it was like the obvious thing that anyone would do if they were a business, and he's one person figuring out where the revenue flows were going to be and where were the outflows, the inflows, the outflows. And for people who would love to use that, if they just had somebody else show them what they, how this guy created this set of tools, which is really very simple, like spreadsheets and things. It really could help people see the reality in, yes, I could bring in $5,000 a year, or $500 a month in this thing, and $700 a month in this, and because he knew exactly what his costs were, and he knew from the 3 years or so he's been doing this, generally how much he was getting from each of these pathways. It just made it so accessible. I don't know if that's something that Chad, you in seeing this, because Jonathan probably has a copy of the presentation, and I'm sure he'd be delighted to talk with you and work through it. But I think other young people would be inspired by seeing how, we just use all the tools and the skill sets that we have. And guess what? Yeah, you got to put it together in a plan. You got to know what your inflows, your outflows, and all that. It was really, really very doable to create a livelihood out of these kinds of things. So would offer to connect anyone with this gentleman, and or Jonathan, if you can find out if we can put this recording, because he did it in like 20 minutes and very intense, very, very organized and smart. So would that be something you'd be interested in seeing?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah.
I think.
Jonathan, could you connect Chad with this information? Yeah.
What was the presenter's name again?
Something like Elon, but
I think it was Elias, wasn't it?
Elias. That might sound. Do you know him? Did you meet him?
Only by meeting him online on the Zoom, not on Livelihoods. It was
You
on
were
a
there,
campfire.
weren't you? Yeah.
At least at a campfire. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Jonathan, where could we put this to have other people access it? Jonathan, is there do you want to think about this? Okay, there he is. Yeah. Can anybody reach out to him?
Find the video. I have to find which video it is, but I think I'm pretty sure I uploaded it. I can give you a link in a minute.
Yeah. Was he interested in carrying the conversation on and continuing offering this on ER or the design school? Because I think he got a free membership. Tunisia is a place he cannot pay for things, believe it or not. They do not let you buy things from Tunisia to other economic systems. So he got a scholarship. So he's in the design school, right, Jonathan? As a community member.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found him. Elias M. He's in the design school. Kim, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I only raised my hand because I thought in Rochester, again, you mentioned someone who has left a job in the schools to go and connect children, or I don't know if it's just children, to nature,
Yeah.
and how
yeah.
he's engaged in your center. And I thought that would be a person that maybe you should connect with Chad. I mean, it seems like from possibly. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, he has a long tenure in the school system. He was one of those favorite best teacher kind of guys.
Mhm.
And then he started this Rochester Ecology Partners, and very smart, organized, a great board, really powerful, and got 2 or 3 or 4 contracts with various schools systems in the area. And they trained like 500 or 700 kids this summer, 1,000. It was unbelievable.
And what did he say to you?
Community Foundation supported it. Our community foundation gave him the money to do these things. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
And he had said something very complimentary to you.
Yeah, what he
Jonathan.
said was that he loved what we're doing in the design school, in having people working at this very micro level, seeing that it's all connected all the way up to the global level. Because he had no idea how to do that. I mean, because he was working at such a micro level. And this is the month he said, yeah, October is going to be a month where I can finally talk. So we haven't done it yet, but if you see a way to share this guy, Chris Widmeyer, who's a wonderful servant leader, no ego, and have him add value to the whole design school for what he's doing. And there might be other people who are in similar situations that could do something that like he's done. Stop being a teacher at school with all the discipline problems and all the, it's not fun being a teacher. But when you can write your own ticket and do this kind of nature-based education and make a living at it. Yeah. And the kids say it's the best thing that the kids and the teachers they involve in the schools, because they work with teachers in the schools to do these programs, they say it's the best thing that they've been doing all year, the nature-based stuff. So that's great. Maybe we get Chris to come and talk to a group. What would be anybody have an idea of what would be a good entry point to who might be interested in hearing what Chris has done, how he's done it, and whether it's replicable?
Well, or just even what part is he doing now that fits into other parts that are, happening and emerging right now, and not necessarily replicating, but I think this space, this Great Lakes bioregion space would be a nice place, because I know people around here who would want to hear that are not in the design school. And this space is not just for design school. This is for the whole Great Lakes or beyond or beyond.
Yeah, this would be a good place to send him to
Invite him.
membership.
Invite him.
Well, yeah, invite him to come in. That would be great. Well, especially,
is it possible that we could invite him to share with us as the first time, or would that be so that when he comes to one of these conversations in 2 weeks from now, a month from now, whatever, that he can share his pathway and have an audience? Would that work? Like maybe a 20-minute presentation, 20-minute Q&A, and still do update. Tell me how that would give me something that I can invite him to. Tell me what it would be that I would invite him to, because he'd do it.
yeah, I mean, I think any week that works for him. We have this general meeting, which can really serve whatever function we want it to be. It can be a place where we can invite speakers in This time we took up the whole time with updates, but that might not always be the case, especially if we know that there's going to be a speaker. We could also invite him to a campfire and have like the first 20 minutes be his presentation with some Q&A, and then the campfire can carry on afterwards. I think it's pretty flexible, whenever it would work for him.
Now, is the campfire part of the design school broadly or the Great Lakes?
Nope, just the Great Lakes. So when we were meeting every week, people still expressed interest in having a space to meet every week. I'm just not able to facilitate it. So my Zoom link is open for people to attend this time every Monday, basically. So whoever shows up can show up. But if we have an invited speaker, I would certainly like message that out and let people know so that people know to show up on that day. Okay.
I'll find out what's a good time of the week for him in general, and then we'll figure out where you could put it. That might be the easiest for him because I know he's probably busy. And I may just interact with you about what's the best place, and make sure that Chad, we keep in touch with you to make sure that you can do that. What grades are you teaching, Chad? Or what levels? Adult or what are you?
College students.
Grad students?
College, yeah.
College students, okay. It's doing elementary.
Okay, well, since we're almost done, I did want to share with you guys the podcast that Benji and I are working on. I've already reached out to a couple of you regarding doing some interviews. I think our goal is ultimately to be able to give some acknowledgement to the different people who are coming together in bioregionalism, particularly landscape leaders that are convening people and hosting bioregional learning processes. And it's actually funny, Chad, when you mentioned pathways, we've actually been focusing on how have people refined their skill sets to get to the place that they're at. Putting it in terms of like fundable skill sets would be really interesting. So I'm very excited to talk to both Elias and Chris. I think that that'll be great. And overall, we want to be sharing a story that's related to bioregional learning processes and examples in real life. So we did post this in the design school, but I'll share this too, because so that people who aren't members can respond within the Great Lakes bioregion Mighty Networks platform. Basically, we're looking for examples of bioregional learning. And we created a document that provides an overview of bioregional learning. And then there's like 5 questions at the bottom that we would love to get people's input on if you have time. It is a little bit of a read, but I think that having that background can be helpful in informing like how you respond to the questions. So I just put the Word document in the chat here. I'm gonna send it. So if you guys have time to look through it and want to give some of your feedback, we're going to be incorporating it we're going to do thematic episodes to discuss bioregional learning and examples. And this will also help us with determining who to interview. If you are open to being interviewed for the podcast, we're looking at potentially also just interviewing groups of people like the Cleveland team that Kim and Dave Nash and Peter are part of, to kind of share what they're doing, even as well as people who are starting bioregional learning centers. So just wanted to share that and orient you guys to that to see if anybody's interested in giving some feedback and input.
Can you give us an example of what you see as I just finished reading it before this.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so it would be really helpful to give a little example or a couple examples of what you mean by what is bioregional learning, or examples of what's happened that
Mm.
changed something in the environment. And I know you and Benji have probably tons, so.
Well, so there are actual bioregional learning centers in the UK that are actually explicitly named that focus on like the archiving. So that's another big thing. If you have somebody who might be archiving a lot of information about your bioregion, we have an archive in one of our universities here in Buffalo. Like that's the start of bioregional learning, even just incorporating all of that transdisciplinary knowledge in one place. The bioregional learning centers are more developed, where they're also meeting and convening places for local landscape leaders and people who are working on restoration projects, indigenous peoples, and things like that. So they're a little bit more advanced. I think that another example might be the Territorial Foundation that Joe's starting in Bari Chara. That's still very new, but it is bringing in people across so many different disciplines that are all looking at their the Bari Chara and the Northern Andes in a holistic way. So they're trying to support each other's projects as well. So I think that those are some examples, but I think that that's a good point, giving some examples to help people think about things too within this document would be helpful.
Mhm. And that Jonathan, by the way, put in the conversation with Elias, but also above that, somebody put in Jonathan put in the one with the India sacred sanctuaries conversation, and they have some really great. They're very new, but they've done all of the kind of things that you're talking about that they've done in England. They've got a repository of archives. They've got they've designed how centers could look. These sacred sanctuaries. They're building them. There's all kinds of little examples in there. So I just think always examples say, oh yeah, now I understand. People are swimming in this.
Mm-hmm.
They just need to have some examples so that they can start remembering things that they know and categorizing them as examples of bioregional learning.
Mm-hmm.
That at the time somebody asks, do you have an example, that we've already thought these are examples of bioregional learning, and maybe there's a little structure like when I used to do business development for a transformational change company, we would have this thing. What was the situation before? What did we do? And what happened? It was like something similar that people go, oh, okay, and they can remember the examples with those three things. Very, very, very obvious things.
Mm-hmm.
That people can put them into that framework and make them really short and have them, but each one could be longer, but it's enough to give structure to each example. So people can always ask the question, how did it start and why? What happened? What was it that you did do? So just a couple of basic things that go into a case study. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
If the nomenclature or something,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, those are all really good points. I think that we can revise our ask a little bit with that information.
And then we can use keywords and have it be cross-referenced, like I'm looking for things about buildings, like native building structures, because I know that's one of the things that they're doing. And they said, you've seen those pictures of cement houses floating down the river in India? Because guess what? Cement is not a good building material. It's like, oh, that makes sense. Monsoon, cement, really bad idea. No one, who would ever think of that? We need natural building. We need the ways they used to build. That didn't happen when they had a monsoon.
Yeah. Well, and I think bringing that culture and that traditional knowledge into it is so key. There was, I was reading an article about how Habitat for Humanity, they typically go in to other countries trying to build sturdy structures that will not collapse and that will last for a long time, and that can be counterintuitive to how the culture there works. Yeah, so
Ineffective,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
because they're not looking at everything that they need to look at in order for them to be safe, sturdy, all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are coming to the end of our time. And I know that Elliot, I'm assuming, is just going to be listening, but RJ, did you want to share anything before we hop off? Because I think you're the only one who didn't get to do an update, if you would like to.
Well, you got all kinds of brain cells working here. Mostly I'd just like to say this is a lot of thinking outside the box that is so powerful. And I'm looking forward to seeing that continue, because that's what we're trying to talk about here too. It really relates. And watching the Cascadia videos, so much good information there, done in such a really good way by Joe and Claire and Brian, and yeah, it's great. And what you guys are doing, what you're doing, Anna, Benji. Yep.
Thanks, RJ. Yeah, so I think maybe we can do our checkouts. Elliot, would you like to start our checkouts?
Sure. So I think I've talked about this before, but just listening to this conversation, kind of the questions that are coming up in my head are, what is my niche? And how do I help tell the story of how that niche links to this bigger picture that allows us to achieve those landscape level, cross-continental projects? Yeah, that's it. I'll pass it over to Kim.
Well, I just repeat what Elliot said. That's the what is it? And gratitude. And I will pass to Victoria.
Fun, energizing, outside the box, hopeful. Thank you. Chad?
Great to see previous work and lines of thinking showing up and converging in this conversation. We're learning. Jonathan.
Great. Well, really appreciate the conversation. It's good to be encouraged, even when you feel things are not going as quickly as you would like. RJ?
Connected. I'd like to just mention for Elliot, we have a 100-year-old giant eastern hemlock 25 feet from where I'm sitting that we're wondering how we can keep going, because it's right at the edge of the changing climate moving north. So, but connected, definitely. Thank you. And Kimberly?
I went quickly,
Yeah,
but Jonathan may want to go.
well, Jonathan just went. So
I just went, so I think it's Anna.
yeah, I think it's just me. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. So glad to see all of your faces again. Really, really interesting conversations for sure. So I will be posting all of this shortly. You guys all
Thank
enjoy.
you for doing everything that you're doing, Anna.
Thanks, Victoria.
Yeah, all right. And everybody else,
Great.
thanks.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you.